because these secrets are being revealed. Some of them are local, some of them aren't. But in many ways, until recent years, very few books have been published about the violence, its intensity, its geography, its savagery, from that particular period, 1920 to 22 in particular, which Pearse Lawlor focuses on in his book, being launched here this evening. There were hints at dark events, at vicious murders, sectarian and political. And for the first time, Pearse has produced a book which charts in a way the scale, the intensity, the geography, and the savagery of the troubles which marked the partition of Ireland in 1920 to 22, looking at the province of Ulster and the northern half of Ireland. I mean, the background to that is immense, and he has sort of penciled in the kind of main historical events which frame those hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths in this province in the early 1920s. The first shots, of course, the gun running at Larne, the Easter Rising of 1916, the shots at Solohead Beg in County Tipperary in 1990, marking the beginning of the Anglo-Irish War. And then, of course, the Irish volunteers in the north become the IRA in this period, as they do in the rest of Ireland. The UVF in the north become the Ulster Special Constabulary by 1920. And so much of the violence, which is at the epicentre of Pearse's book, is really trench warfare between these two forces, the IRA, backed particularly from 1922 by Michael Collins in Dublin, and the Ulster Specials, who had very much the conscience and support of James Craig, the new Prime Minister of Northern Ireland from 1920. And that is kind of the background of these events. Now, in the last 2 years, 3 years, Pearse has chronicled the impact of that explosion of sectarian violence in Lisburn, Dromore, Banbridge, in his book, The Burnings, in that particular period. But this book chronicles so much more, so many small incidents, forgotten by all except those of the, survivors, of very few left, the descendants of those who were affected by those troubles. We think of the McMahon murders of an entire Roman Catholic family in Belfast in 1922. We think of the murder of the children at Weaver Street, now covered by the M2 motorway, playing around the lamppost when a bomb exploded, killing 5 of them. We think of the murder of a Church of Ireland clergyman in County Cavan, a retired Church of Ireland clergyman from Kildare and Loughlin, who had retired to Bonboy in County Cavan and who was shot to death in June 1921, just as partition occurred. Obviously, a sectarian murder, in this case by the IRA, the other sectarian murders involving perhaps loyalists or specials. You had the Clonus ambush of 1922, in which a party of B specials left Newton Isles for Enniskillen, but unfortunately for them, passed through County Monaghan, which was then in the Irish Free State. There was a gun battle at Clonus Station. 4 specials were killed, an IRA commander was killed, and a number of specials were taken prisoner, held for months in Free State territory. This sparked off, if you like, a chain of retribution in Belfast. Any match on the border in 1920 or 1922 came as a match to a powder keg in the political sectarian atmosphere which existed in Belfast and northeast Ulster at that time. And then, of course, you had the Alt-Neve shootings just outside Newry on the railway line of a little Protestant hamlet targeted in June 1922 in retaliation for the murder of nationalists. Now you have the murder of unionists. You have so many of these brutal sectarian events in this period. As Pearse says in the introduction to his book, this account discounts very much any romantic notions about the good old IRA or the good old B specials in this particular period. It wasn't until the Irish Civil War of 1922 that peace came dropping slow in the north of Ireland. Very, very slow. Curfew continued for another year. Special powers were in force. Internment continued to 1924. an uneasy peace came through. And very few people were prosecuted for this wave of killings and murder and intimidation and reprisals in this period, which involved, if you like, forces unleashed by the Irish Revolution, and forces which had very often the kind of connivance and support of official governments in Ireland, north and south. So much of the worst violence which Pearse talks about erupted during that period of 1922 between the treaty and the Irish Civil War, when we were very much mired in the politics of uncertainty. Uncertainty about the future of the Northern Ireland state. Uncertainty about the future of the border. Would it be removed with a boundary commission? Would the North be contracted to a unionist homeland? Nobody knew. And this is translated into fears in the wider community at that time. In fact, in March 1922, you have 4 governments operating in Ireland. You have the provisional government of Michael Collins and Arthur Griffith in Dublin. You have the Dublin Castle regime, which is really a dying government, the old British regime, which had once ruled all Ireland. You had the Northern Ireland government of James Craig, digging itself in Belfast. Not at Stormont, by the way, but in the Assembly's College on Botanic Avenue. And you had the anti-treaty IRA, who had just seized the forecourts and were very much a law unto themselves. So when you think about that confusion, it helps to explain the outrages which Pearse Lawlor describes graphically in this book. And it's very much an interesting account. If you have ancestors, family background in a certain part of the country, then you can look that up. But you can see the spiral of outrage, murder, burning, reprisal, which very often, and in most cases, affected innocent people. So I commend this book to you as a fine piece of original research. Thank you very much.